Welcome to the realm of magic and mystery, classic horror and sci-fi. You are now entering the House of the Unusual podcast with your hosts, Eddie and Joe. Welcome everyone to House of the Unusual podcast. I am your host, Joe Pavlansky, pop culture historian and writer for Scary Monsters magazine. With me, as always, is the maestro of mail order mysteries and owner of houseoftheunusual.com, the one, the only, Eddie Guevara. Tonight's special guest, he's been on before and you all loved him. He's master horror magician Chuck Caputo. Chuck, how's it going, brother?
Okay, pretty good, Joe. I'm glad to be here again. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
How you doing, Chuck? Everybody's good?
Yeah, we're all doing good. Eddie,
Yep.
Eddie, what's new on your end over there on House of the Unusual?
Well, I've been thinking I'm going to do some changes in our end here. I'm going to be, coming future, we're going to kind of separate the words for House of the Unusual, like for Google searches and stuff. So it's easier to find because I think most people type House of the Unusual as 4 separate words. So I've been working on being able to make it easier for people. And I'm taking off, like where it says House of the Unusual .radio. I'm going to take off the .radio. I'm just going to leave everything House of the Unusual. This way people will come in and all the links will come out in Google. So
Awesome.
It's going to take a couple of weeks to transition over, but that's my plan.
So for now, everyone keep, if you're going to search for the podcast or anything else, House of the Unusual.radio, all one word. And as soon as we change it over to separate all the words, and hopefully it'll be a little bit more user friendly, we'll put an update on the webpage, our social media, and let everybody know on the podcast here too, so that you could more easily find us and check out some of our past episodes, and hopefully stay with us for some future ones. So, Chuck, what's been new over in good old Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania?
Well, Joe, it's cold. I'll tell you that. I mean, we've been getting 17 degrees, 20 degrees. It's very, very cold. But I've been keeping busy. I've been doing some Zoom shows and everything. I'm still not performing live, because of the COVID and everything. But I'm on Zoom performing different shows and so forth. And I have a break right now where I can build things. So I'm still working on creating some magic and so forth.
Oh, that's awesome. I tell you what, man, about a few days after when we did the last podcast together, I kind of went down a little rabbit hole on your YouTube page and started watching just about every video you had on there. I mean, the magic was so cool, and I really, really dug the that haunted house one. But there is one video I got to ask. What is the I believe it's called? Is it Trundle Manor?
Yes, that's correct.
A few shows there. Could you tell us a little bit about, Trundle Manor and the shows that you do there, and if you still do any of them there?
Absolutely. You know what? If you guys ever come out to Pittsburgh, you have to see this place. Call in advance and make an appointment. I don't know if he's still open to tours right now, but but when things get better with this COVID, it's a fantastic place. Trundle Manor is in Swissville, Pennsylvania. And it's basically an oddities museum. I mean, this place is so cool. They have a lot of antique surgical devices, steampunk type of things. It's really, really cool. And so, the owner and I are pretty good friends. And so he has got me over for several different private parties and so forth. Now, the one you saw, Joe, that took place on Halloween night, I believe. And it was on his front porch. It was chilly that evening, and he had a movie night. So they would play some scary movies. But prior to that, they had me do maybe an 8-minute performance.
That's the one that I seen. That was really cool.
Yeah, you know what? It was fantastic, and I brought some of my best stuff there. One is an automaton. It's of a spooky, almost like a demon head type of thing, where I have several. I have a few cards selected. I push them back into the pack, and I put the pack of cards in his mouth, and then I stand back, and then the cards will pop out the top of his head. It's kind of a neat effect. And you know what? That place is always a pleasure to go to. It's a fantastic place. If anybody ever comes out to Pittsburgh, look it up, and I would highly recommend it.
I can't believe I never heard of it, because I'm about 45 minutes or so from.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm out in the Youngstown area, and I don't think I've ever heard of Trundle Manor unless I have in the past. And but I dig all things spooky, so I'm kind of
Yeah.
I can't believe I've never heard about it. I definitely got to look it up. Now, do they still do like the showing movies and all that, like around Halloween or any other time during the year? Do you know of?
Yeah, they have different functions, and it depends, what they're doing that particular time. But yeah, throughout the year they have a few outdoor type of events, and they have tours inside, like I said, where you can call and they can take you through the place, and it is free. They do not charge anything, but you just give a donation,
Right.
But it's I tell you, some really unusual stuff. I mean, I think that would fit you perfect because I know you're into things of that nature, and it's just mind blowing. And Joe, there are a couple other videos on there as well. I'm inside Trundle Manor for a few of their private parties I was performing. So you'll see, you know what, that's the kind of place, Joe, where I could let my imagination run wild. I bring all my really strange magic there. I mean, I've haunted baby dolls that kick things across the room, talking skulls, things of that nature. But there is actually, I believe, 2 or 3 more videos at Trundle Manor. So if you keep looking through my channel, you'll find them.
Now I'm looking at some of the pictures online of Trundle Manor, and I mean it looks really cool and wild. And there's this one picture of it looks like a turtle kissing a chicken pushing a baby stroller of baby chicks.
Yeah, some crazy stuff.
Yeah,
Man.
they got some wild stuff there, man. I gotta definitely check that
Check
out.
it out.
Hopefully when all this COVID nonsense junk, whatever you want to call it, apocalypse clears up, maybe we could meet up out there. And
yeah, that would be cool,
since
man. That
we're
would
so
be great.
close, because I don't get out to Pittsburgh much, and I'm only about an hour and a half from Cleveland. I don't even really get out to Cleveland too much, but
Okay.
I know there's a lot of
Youngstown
out there.
Youngstown's a pretty cool place. Years ago, I performed a lot of school shows out there. You know what? I always liked it. It's a very good area, and the people were always very nice to me. I would actually stay at one of the motels because I'd book a block of school shows for like 3 or 4 days straight. So once I was done with one day, I would perform maybe 3 different school shows. I'd come back, sleep, go out to the other 3 shows or what have you.
You
But
might be you might be the only person in history that says they liked Youngstown and that they.
I do. You know what? The people were very, very nice to me.
No,
They were
it's a good. I mean, it's just like anywhere you have your good and bad areas, and there's definitely more good around Youngstown, and it's they're trying to build it up and bring it back. But after the steel mills and all that closed in the late '70s, it's just like everywhere else, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, the whole Rust Belt and all that just got decimated. But
absolutely, they were a nice bunch of down to earth people. They were great.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of nice people, but this Trundle Manor, I'm looking at these pictures. I'm just kind of sitting here drooling over some of the odd stuff.
I'm telling you,
and I couldn't imagine, watching one of your magic shows there, one of the spooky magic shows, or even watching some horror movies there. I mean, that's like the perfect atmosphere. Now, who runs that place?
Okay, it's a husband and wife, and he goes by the name Mr. Arm, and that's ARM. What that is acronym. His name is Anton Raphael Mariello, and he calls himself out of that Mr. Arm. And he just got married. He invited me to his wedding. It was a cool wedding. You know what? The wedding reception, it was very, very cool. Some of the neatest stuff you've ever seen.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I think he's been married now about 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. But he's married to a wonderful woman. She calls herself Velda von Minks, I believe, and very, very, very nice people. Very, very nice people.
That's cool. There, we'll have to definitely keep in touch and meet up out there. Or even when you're doing a show, I'll have to head out that way, and maybe we could even talk old Eddie into driving out from where he's at the House of the Unusual headquarters.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
he got a little longer drive, but he can make it.
No, I was actually thinking Chuck kind of talked me into driving that way soon because of something he said he was going to let me have, which is kind of exciting. So I'm definitely going to probably rent a vehicle because my car wouldn't fit the device he's got in it, so I can bring it back this way. Chuck, we're talking about that device. What was the name of the device?
Yeah, what this is called is a blue room effect, and it goes back to probably back to the 1800s. The actual idea, it's called the Pepper's Ghost illusion, if you read any of the Robert Houdin books and so forth, what he actually explains it. But this is it's kind of a tabletop version, but it's fairly large. It's about a 36-inch square cube, and the front is open. So whatever you place inside this thing, all you do is you hit a button and you walk away. It'll slowly disintegrate, almost like Star Trek. It'll like slowly disintegrate until it's completely gone. And then if you wish, what you can do is make it come back. I mean, this is really cool. Basically, it works on a lighting system with rheostats. The front part of the lights are bright, but then slowly it's timed. They'll get dimmer, and then the backlights behind the glass will turn brighter. So it'll shift. In other words, there's a piece of glass that separates the box, but it'll actually turn into a mirror if the lighting is done properly.
Yeah, that's actually there. There's a couple of books, and I've seen Chuck. I'm always sure you've seen them. One of the books is called The Ghost. The Pepper's Ghost, or the idea of the ghost, has been around for quite some time. I have actually two copies. One of them is just called The Ghost, and then there's another hard copy, like a hardcover, that I pay like $80 for. It now sells for like $700. You know which books I'm talking about, Chuck?
I have an idea. Yeah, they sound vaguely familiar. Yes. Uh-huh.
Because like I said, it's all based on it tells you the whole history behind the Pepper's Ghost illusion, how it was used in the 1800s. Now, one thing that I thought it was funny to bring up in the show is, how we always talk about mail order, where we had the long wait back in the 70s. Well, back a few days ago, about 10, 15 days ago, I mailed Chuck, Joe, you, and Todd a package each. And for some reason, Chuck's package took a tour around the country.
Oh,
It went from here to Pittsburgh.
yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, and then from Pittsburgh was there 2 days and came back to Jersey. It went back, I think, to Pittsburgh and back to Jersey again. And then finally back to my P.O. box. So my baffle is, why in the world is this happening? Why is it? And today, when the package, they couldn't find it. Had the postmaster look around and finally found it, and the mystery was solved. What happened was that when I sent out the package, the girl at the clerk at the clerk counter, she entered the address for me instead of the to address. And when she put the tracking number, what happened was the package address was Pittsburgh, PA, and it went there. But the moment they scanned it, they said, "Oh, this package is in the wrong destination." They sent it back to me.
Unbelievable.
It was interesting, but it gave poor Chuck over there the ansies. I mean, he was very anxious to get it, and obviously he was thinking, like, "Where's my package?" And
that's crazy. It went all over the place like that.
First time it happens ever to me. I mean, I think in 20, 30 years that I can recall any incident, this was one of them.
Yeah, that was crazy.
We'll just blame it on you, Eddie. That's all.
Yeah, the house of the unusual. Now, let me say one thing to you guys. It's funny, and this happened today too, which was ironic, but it's been one of those weird days. I'm in work, and all of a sudden I hear my computer go ka-ching, and I say, "Well, $183 sale in 4:00 in the morning. What was that?" What happened is that Wix updated their servers, and when they updated their servers, even though I accept payment as PayPal on my Wix, it deleted and assigned me one of their accounts. So what happened was, I had in the shopping cart a few things from a year ago when I was practicing to order through the website, when I was doing the website, and it automatically charged me for the items like if I was purchasing them. So the purchase was actually made from one of my credit cards to me. So then I found out something very strange that I didn't know worked like this. But if somebody buys something in PayPal, and let's say the person gets a refund, PayPal refunds you the fees, or what they call the transaction fees. With the Wix payment gateways, the company they use doesn't do that. So they were trying to charge me $12.80 for the transaction. So I'm actually fighting it now, because I'm like, how can you charge me $12.80 for something that was a mistake? I didn't authorize it. But anyway, just to make a long story short, I thought that was funny. Between that and the lost package of Chuck, it was like one of those weird days where things happen that are like, really in a weird way. But anyway, What I wanted to ask you, Chuck, and I was listening to you guys with the manor and stuff like that. There is next to my house, about maybe 7 or 8 blocks away, there's an old church building that used to be a St. Michael's monastery. In
Okay.
fact, if you guys Google the St. Michael's Monastery in Union City, New Jersey, you'll see the building.
Okay.
It was built over 200 years ago, over close to 200 years ago. And then, of course, the Catholic Church gave it up and it became where I think it's abandoned. But the whole monastery itself looks like one of those European castles. And the whole block around it was the monastery. And it had even an old cemetery there. So what they did, of course, real estate developers developed in the backyard of it and all that because it was a square block of area. It's a great looking building, man. At night, when you walk towards the side of it, I mean, I have to look for a photo and send it to Joe. He'll salivate over it, but it has a really, really gruesome looking to it, look to it. But having said that, Chuck, when you do horror magic, and I know that's what you do the most, and you have a collection of our is it pronounced Arditi, correct? How do you
Inverti.
Inverti? I'm pronouncing wrong, of course.
Yeah.
Inverti magic and stuff, such as a talking skull and all that stuff.
Yes.
A lot of the jokes, I mean, a lot of the tricks today, not jokes, a lot of the magic tricks today, do you think they're based on a lot of his things? Because I've seen a lot of those similar items, like the talking skull, do you think they came from people copying him?
Well, you know what? I think the modern ones do, but if you trace the lineage of the talking skull, it goes back to the Josephi talking skull, which I believe he was from Austria, if I'm not mistaken, in like the early 1800s, I believe. But he hammered his talking skull out of copper, so this sucker was very heavy, and his was watchwork. So the actual origins of the talking skull goes back probably at least 200 years or so. Like as far as magic people have actually used them, such as myself. But the thing about Anverti was he pioneered the micro electronics, where he actually put the electronics into the skull itself, to make his jaw clack with remote control, so you don't have to be anywhere near it. So he kind of put it into like a new dimension. He propelled it into like a new era. So yeah, he's generally created. His name is Tony Anverti, and he was a Dutch magician slash inventor. So if you Google him online, it's ANV as in Victor, ERDI. So if you Google him, you'll see a lot of his creations and so forth. And I have probably the largest the Anverti collection in the world. So that's why like a lot of these magazines feature me. Which is a very it's a very humbling experience. I'm very thankful to have them. To even consider me to do that. But yeah, the other night, what you saw was a podcast. It was a visual audio podcast, and I demonstrated a lot of the Anverti effects, the talking skull. There's a mental die where it's a cube, standard dice. It's about 3 inches by 3 inches. A spectator places it into an opaque box and closes the lid. And while you're across the room, you can still discern which digit is facing up. And the whole thing is electronic. And he built that in about 1975, 1976. So that thing is, 30, 34 years old, 35, and it still works, And yeah, so
Mhm.
it's he was a fantastic inventor, and he took magic probably to a new height.
I saw the skull last night as you were showing it, but here's something interesting that I have to add to that. What that reminded me of were two things. The first time I ever seen something like a talking head like that was I was introduced to it while watching Lost in Space. There's an episode where they bring a box to Dr. Smith, and when they open the box, there's an alien head inside that talks. Are you familiar
I
with that,
think I
any of
think
you
I
guys?
remember that. I think I remember that episode. Yep.
Okay. That's what I bought. And I always try to reproduce that, believe it or not. I like that particular thing. It was kind of cool, like the talking alien. But when you showed the little skull, I was like, do I have that in my collection? I have a feeling
Wow.
that I might have one. And, the reason I think is because when I did buy it, I probably bought it a long time ago, probably in 1999, 2001.
Wow.
And I think I bought it because I was looking for the Dr. Smith on eBay. And this is the early days of eBay. And I think that talking skull came across. And if I remember, I paid something like $29 or $35 for it. And I think I have it because I know it's a small little skull and it moves. And I'm almost sure it's the one that you showed last night. And the thing, I don't remember it. If I have it, I'm gonna have to like do a soul searching through my boxes,
right,
and see if I go. But I think for some reason, you know what? I think I have one of them. And again, I didn't buy it because it was a Verdi or a magic trick. I bought it because I was trying to replicate the Dr. Smith Talking Skull, which, believe it or not, one of the Chiller Theater conventions I attended about 5 or 6 years ago, somebody actually had a life-size built one of those.
Cool.
I don't know if they were selling it. I don't know if they just had a demonstration. I know I was trying to look at it, but there were so many people around the table that I forgot about it. And I went on my way, and then I said, oh, sheesh, I forgot to see if but basically, because what I do have, and in fact, I ordered one of them, but I kind of got disappointed and canceled after I ordered it. And I had an opportunity to get an original, is from the Twilight Zone, the episode where William Shatner is, and they go to this restaurant, and on top of the restaurant there's
oh my
they call it the Seeker. What is that called? The
that's the seer. That's
the Seer. Okay,
seer. Yep.
Yes, and I actually ordered a life-size one of those on Etsy about 2 years ago. And then after I ordered, I was waiting for it. And the guy's like, well, it's going to take me 2 months to send it out because I make them by hand. So I got disappointed. I'm like, you know what? I'll take my money back. And now they actually made a copy of one. I do have a mini version of it. I have about 2 or 3 mini versions of it with the Twilight Zone. They're like action figures,
right?
And it has the Seer. The Seer is one of them,
right?
But the life-size version that they made, there was one that actually would spit out the fortune cards.
Dude,
it works just like the original. They're doing $2,500 on eBay right now.
Wow,
and I could.
That's you know what, Eddie? That's my absolute favorite episode of the Twilight Zone. I'm a huge Twilight Zone fan, and so is my and so is my wife. And you know what? That's our favorite episode. It's called Nick of Time. And there's just
Nick of Time.
Yep, and there's just something about that episode. It is just so cool. Like they get stranded in a little town in Ohio. They stop in a diner, and the husband, which is William Shatner, gets obsessed with this little seer, and he keeps putting pennies into it, and he keeps asking questions. And it's just a cool episode. It's just the whole scenery. There's something about that episode. That's my absolute favorite one.
Oh yeah, that little it's like a little machine with a devil's head or something on the top of it. That's got to be one of the coolest props.
It is.
I know a few years ago, I think it might have been Sideshow Toys or something like that.
That's the one that put it out. You're right.
Yep.
Yeah, they were selling a prop of it. It was really cool. But yeah, that's a super episode, man.
That's fantastic.
It's just like the talking head from Zachary Lee Smith, which was an alien. But I think the idea behind a lot of these inventions are probably all taken from people reading old books or seeing old magic shows, from props like the skull, the talking skull you have there. Then they have you yourself have made a new one, which is the shrunken head.
Right.
It's been like a big thing. Like with the shrunken heads, for example, one of the when we talk about shrunken head, I just mentioned that it's not changing the conversation, but there was Vincent Price was on the cover of the 1970s Shrunken Head kit.
I remember that.
To advertise on TV.
Yep.
That box, if you see it, it's such a phenomenal looking box. I actually paid like $70 for one of those just to get the box.
Sure.
And it would show you how to carve apples and make them into shrunken heads.
Yep.
So it was it was good. It wasn't a bad kit. I mean, a little messy, I guess, for a kid, whatever. But
those kits are hard to come by now too. I've been looking for years for one of those.
Absolutely.
You have? I've actually come across it like 4 times last year.
Really? I haven't seen them.
Oh my gosh!
Every time I go to a show, I look for them, and I just are
you talking about the Vincent Price one in particular?
Yeah.
I
never see them.
I'm glad you told me that. I'll be on the lookout because I know I got mine for 70. Some guy, sells it for 60.
Yeah.
They sell, but in reality, most of the kits are not complete 100% because all it really is to look at it. When you open up the kit, what it has inside is equivalent to a pumpkin carving kit.
Oh, okay.
It basically shows you how to carve the apples into a shrunken head, and they put Vincent Price obviously because I don't know. Talking about when we were talking about the height of each other before, Chuck, we were talking about weight and stuff earlier.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention his daughter told me he was about 6'5", 6'6". This guy was huge.
Oh, he was a large man. That's a tall man, very tall. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And you don't notice it on the television because I could tell you what, one time I went to Chiller and I met the cast of Dallas. And of course, the cast of Dallas had Larry Hagman, which is, I Dream of Jeannie.
Sure.
There. So I wanted to. And one thing that shocked me, the guy who played his brother, Bobby, this guy was like 6'8", man.
Really?
He is huge. And I'm like, what the hell?
Is that Patrick? Is that Patrick Duffy? I believe.
Patrick Duffy. I think it was. Look him up. You'll see his height.
Wow.
But when you see him, it's just like the guy who did a Gladiator. He's about 5'2", 5', but yet he looks like a big guy. They play it off on the TV where you never see them together, like side by side. You can distinguish the height of one another.
Yeah.
My friend is 6'5", and when we went to Chiller, Patrick Duffy towered over.
Isn't that something? Wow.
Really, really baffling.
Wow.
But I mean, that's the way a lot of those things are. But my question to you also is like, in horror magic, especially when you use those devices, there is. I've got intrigued by it like a year or two ago. I was when I was young, there was some company selling the Fun Stuff was the name, and they had this little floating ghost, and they called it the Pet Ghost. And well, anyway, so I started thinking about all this thing when I mentioned to you about the thing with Mason and, developing the one item. And I thought, and then also a company came out with a thing called the Pet Ghost. And David Harris had, from SS Adam had gone to New York City, and he filmed the guy showing the ghost. And he's like, Eddie, this guy is selling hundreds of them, but they weren't out yet. So then when they finally came out on eBay, I actually bought like 36 of them. But it works on the principle of the haunted handkerchief.
Right.
Not the haunted handkerchief, but yeah, the dancing handkerchief is the one I'm talking about. The dancing hanky. But they took it to the next level. They put a handkerchief and they put a face of a ghost on it. And the guy that demonstrates it, which I'm going to find the video and send it to you guys, does a phenomenal job showing this disembodied spirit that you grab, and it's a pet ghost and it jumps up and down, whatever, this and that. Great, awesome magic trick. So I started, because of that, getting involved with the dancing handkerchiefs. I wanted to try. So I went over to Florida, to St. Augustine, to Theater Magic, which is that company I told you. I don't remember the name of the guy who owns it right now, but the guy was selling there, and he boxed the kit. Now, the way he boxes his products, he uses a little 2-inch by 2-inch box. It kind of looks like those boxes you would buy in a novelty store, like a Hobby Lobby, to put jewelry in. But they're kind of like a flimsy box, but then he shrink wraps them. And they're colorful and they're printed professionally. So I bought the haunted hanky there, and I just bought it basically because of the way the box looked. And what I do to preserve it is I flatten out the box, put it between books, like in one of those comic book cardboards to make the box, preserve the box, because I love the artwork on it. And then I took out the haunted hanky, and the way it works, has the thing where you attach it to your fingertip, and it has the wire. And I mean, that's one of them. But anyway, when you're talking about electronics, and the reason I brought up the haunted hank and the whole story around it took me an hour to explain it, is that I came across one guy in particular. I forgot his name, around December, and he's selling a haunted handkerchief, electronic one, for $1,200. So I'm like, what can justify? Like, it's amazing. It's just like that company Spider that comes out with like the floating ring, and they go for the prices of $200 to $300.
Yeah.
But anyway, do you know anything about that particular heavy duty priced haunted handkerchief?
Yeah, you know what? The guy that you're probably talking about, I think, anyway, I mean, I'm not sure, but the guy that came out with electronic type of hankies goes back about 10 years ago. His name is Sean Bagunia, and that might be the guy you're talking about. Now, he came out with a few different versions. I actually have one or two of his versions. Don Wayne back in the mid 70s, early 80s, he collaborated with David Copperfield and he came out with the Dancing Hank. Okay, but that was a manual type of an operation. So this guy Sean Bagunia came up with different versions where it's a motorized type of a version where there's a button you push and it'll bounce back around and so forth. So I do have a couple versions of his Dancing Hank, and it is fantastic. I mean, but the thing you're talking about with with the manual type of thing with a little wire, I think Steve Dushek, I think he pretty much came out with that back in the early '70s, late '60s. It was called Waltzing Matilda was the original name, and it was a really cool little hanky. It was like a self-contained little unit with a wire, like you said. You know what? But if this is done properly, it looks like real magic. I mean, it's absolutely amazing.
Well, let me say one thing to you. A lot of people don't realize. If anybody who grew up reading a Johnson Smith catalog will remember that the Johnson Smith had a beautiful ad for the dancing handkerchief. And it kind of looks like a little ghost figure, and it has like 3 or 4 photographs of it across a stage. And it's I mean, if you pick up a Johnson Smith catalog, you'll see what I'm talking about. So I grew up seeing the ad for the haunted handkerchief, but I never really got into what it was. But see, one of the things that also, when they do things like that makes it stand out in the crowd is the way they package it. If you look at the haunted handkerchief from Loftus Novelties, which is the originator of the haunted handkerchief. Now, there's two different. The haunted hanky is one thing that dances around, and the haunted handkerchief is something you lay on a table and then it starts moving. And you know what I'm talking about. There's two different
Yeah,
ones, right?
yeah, that one's called Glorpy. That the original one is called Glorpy.
They
That one you can make stand up on the table and so forth. It'll rise. Yeah, it's
yeah.
pretty cool.
I have Gorpy. Gorpy is one of the original. And then, but what I was gonna say, the one that stood out the most that was sold in the Johnson Smith catalog too since the '70s, and stood out the most is the Loftus Novelty. They call it the Hilarious Haunted Handkerchief, I
Right.
think. And they did make a later version where they changed the art on the envelope itself. I think they failed by doing that, because if you look, and I have both, I have like 4 different versions of
Hmm.
that. The artwork in the original haunted handkerchief from Loftus Novelties, the one that it looks like it's like a dark blue front, and then it has like a ghost flying out of like a castle window.
Yeah.
You know which one I'm
Yep.
talking about? That's top notch. That's the one I think Joe would pick to put in his collection.
As long as it's horror, I'll throw it right in my collection.
But
Yeah, I actually.
if you go back to the Dancing Hank, Harry Blackstone Sr. back in the '30s in vaudeville, I mean, he made that really popular. I mean that was a stage type of thing where he used it would dance around. It looked real, and he had a box called the Casadega box. It was like a box with diamond cut openings in the front. This handkerchief would go inside one of these holes, pop out the other side, come back around. It would dance on the stage. It would jump up on his hand. With his other hand, he would hold his fingers like a gun, and it bang, and it would drop dead. I mean, it was fantastic. He did that way back, and then he passed that to his son, Harry Blackstone Jr., and he performed it up until he passed away. I guess around 1992, 93, he died somewhere in that area. But that goes back to the
Yeah,
vaudeville days, actually. Yeah, the large stage version.
yeah, it's kind of, well, it works in a similar premise. Well, the zombie ball, I think it's a little more complicated because you have to have more strings and
Right,
more. But the zombie ball is one of those items too that, again, you need a big stage to pull it off. It's not a magic trick you can just
right,
do anywhere, but yet it's popularized because of the way they play it, with the zombie ball,
absolutely.
and growing up looking at Cristobal, that's another horror magic that I think was really fantastic. And, one of the things they did, especially in spook shows, is they would have ghosts fly throughout the audience above the heads of the people and scare them at the end of the day. And, I saw a similar thing, and I always thought, like, how would they do that? But listen, I went to Pennsylvania. We went with my church about a couple of years ago. And they took us to that movie theater over there. Not a movie theater; it's a famous Christian theater. It looks like the Disneyland castle. I forget it where in Pennsylvania. It's by the Amish country. I think it's like 2 hours, 3 hours from
Oh,
my
okay.
area. But I went to this theater that holds probably 40, 50,000 people inside. It's huge. And they had Jonah and the Whale was the play that they were playing. And when I'm sitting there, the next thing I look above my head and there's a whale flying right over my head. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And it was physically made of material, but it flew all over the thing. And I was like, that's got to be the coolest thing ever.
Wow.
And now, even though I grew up in Manhattan and my mom worked in 34th Street, right across Tanners in that area for probably 36 years, I never actually went to a Broadway play. I've never been of interest to go to a Broadway play. So that was kind of like one of the ones I went, which is funny for being a collector and growing up in Manhattan. People think, hey, listen, I've never even been in the Empire State Building.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom worked right across the street from it. So the point I'm trying to say to you is that it's just that when you have things next to you, you take it for granted.
That's true.
I mean, I had all the magic shops that started the thing were blocks away from where my mom worked. Tannen's Magic Shop, Flasso Hornin Magic Shop. And I went in it once or twice. And one store that is still in business is called the Starlog store.
Mm-hmm.
They've been in business from the early 70s. They sold comic books,
Wow.
and they're still on 13th Street. Then there is a company called the Abracadabra Magic Store, and they're located in the Village. I think it's 23rd Street. And Tricky Mickey is the manager there. His name is Mike, I think, but he goes under Tricky Mickey. And he's funny. He's a Christian magician. He's really cool at that. And he'll give you a card that says, it's all about Jesus, that type of stuff. But the thing that was really interesting about him, he gave me a tour, which I could send some photos to you guys of the shop. It's 3 floors, and it's phenomenal. It's a huge magic shop, and it's been there over 70 years.
Wow.
So it's there, and it's a prime property. It's like really almost next to Broadway. And this shop, when you go inside, at one time they used to produce their own catalog and stuff, but when you go to the basement, they have life-size props. And some of those props were life-size Egyptian mummy, kind of like King Tut's mummy things that you would open it up and it had spikes in it.
Is that cool? Wow.
Yeah. I have pictures. I can send them to you guys if you guys
I'd like to see that. That would be cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I was saying, and then he showed me how he was able to put a balloon through his mouth and come out of his nose. Like he was able to do that. And he did it for real. I guess that's something you got to practice.
Yeah.
And then he showed me the spider with the floating ring and all that stuff. And as soon as I came out of there, I'm like, what? Because I'm obviously, I don't want to pay the high prices of things because I know when I can get them. So what I did is I called Scott. Let me not say the name. I called the manager or the owner for Morris Costumes, and I'm like, dude, I need this. Do you have it? Are you carrying this item? Because they're charging me like $75. Yeah, I want it for like 10 or 20, And he goes to me, he goes, which one? He goes, oh my, he goes, I don't have that one in particular. Find out what the company is. I like to carry it. So I'm like, okay, that didn't get me nowhere. But the ring itself, the prop, later I was able to obtain it like for $15 on eBay. Which it's just a ring. It has a little mechanism that you put in your pocket and stuff, and through an invisible string, the ring flies in the air and it lands on your finger, which is so bizarre. The guy did it right in front of me, and I was baffled by it. Like he'll take the ring, he spins it in midair, okay, and then he puts his finger right through the ring, and the ring is just flying all around him. And by me, it's very well performed. It was a phenomenal trick that I almost actually fell for it and bought it, even though I know, I mean, I'm not a magician, but I know of magic, and I've always been intrigued in collecting magic apparatus. I do have, what I have in my collection that I acquired a few years ago? That balloon that I forget what it is. It's supposed to be like a guy, and his head pops. It's a prop. It's like 2-3 feet tall. I forget what it was. I think you paint the face on him, And then when you put something, the head pops. You know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about,
yeah, the
right?
balloon pops, and then the duplicate head pops comes into play. It comes up behind the balloon. Yeah.
That's the one. I was able to get one of those, and then one that I have about several sets. I have about 3 sets, and one of them cost me like $300. Is where you have a black box. It looks like the cabinet that the 3-way cabinet, that life size cabinet. You put a person in, you slide the blades on the
Hmm.
side. It looks like that, but it's a skeleton. Like you stick the head of the skeleton in, and then the body, and then it all comes as one
Hmm.
piece. When you lift up the whole
Hmm.
unit, I have a Spanish version made in Spain, constructed of solid wood and stuff. That one cost me like
Hmm.
$249. I have one from Brazil. I have,
Nice.
like a couple of famous ones. Anything that dealt with haunted magic, especially the
Hmm.
Tenyo. I have the Tenyo little haunted
Yeah. Oh,
house.
yeah, that was cool. I remember that. Yep.
I have two of those in mint condition,
Hmm.
unopened. I also have the more modern one, which is the third one, of where it's kind of, the box kind of sucks because the artwork is in Chinese,
Yeah.
so it loses
Yeah. The appeal kind of. Yeah, I know what you
the appeal. But I do have that as well, which is the
mean. Yeah.
same trick. I have everything from that little ghost kit that comes in 3 cards, and it's a
Yeah, that's
ring,
pretty cool.
and the ghost switches place. Okay, I have like 4 or 5 of those. Everything when it comes to haunted magic. I usually search
Wow,
haunted
that's great.
magic,
So, wow, so
and
you're a big
I
fan.
wound up buying
Well,
it.
you know what? Tenyo does a pretty good job overall. About 15 years ago, Eddie, there was an effect they released called the floating rock. Do you remember that? It was like a moon rock, and I have a few of those, and it's a cool effect. It's a close up effect. It's a very realistic looking rock, and you basically lay it down on this little panel that comes with it, and it kind of looks like a photograph of the moon's surface, and there's a little band that you lay around it, and all you do is you just pass your hand over the rock and it'll start to levitate. It'll actually float off that panel about 2 or 3 inches. And what's cool about it is the panel is designed in such a way that you could push it around. So you move it around while the rock is suspended. It's a really baffling illusion. It's called the Tenyo floating rock or moon rock. And it's a really cool, it came out about 15 years ago. It was really hot. And so that's something to look into if you don't have
I
one.
Well, I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because here's the funny thing about it. I do have that,
Okay.
and when I was developing, remember what I told you about the rock, the moving rock
Yeah.
and stuff. I was trying to look for a way to make the trick work, and I went crazy looking for that Tenyo product. I have no idea where the heck it is. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it like in, I don't know, since the '90s, and I've looked for it, man. Now that you say you have a couple, maybe you can explain the apparatus on it, so maybe I can duplicate it. But I'm kind of glad, because I've been going on eBay, and they're kind of like hard to
Yeah,
come
like I
by.
said, they came out about 15 years ago, and
Yeah, it's kind of looks like the moon
mhm.
itself, the little round, and then the surface looks like the Mars or moon surface. I guess they
Oh
try to
yeah, oh
portray.
yeah. The whole principle behind it is brilliant. Luber Fiedler, he was a German magic inventor, and he created some of the Tenyo effects. So that's why they're so good. I mean, there's the ones he created anyway. He was absolutely fantastic. If you look him up on YouTube, you can see him perform. He passed away now, but he was absolutely amazing. I mean, I've never seen magic like this. His name is Luber Fiedler. So if you check him out on YouTube, they have a few videos of him. I mean, you will be amazed at the stuff. It's all close up. You'll be amazed at the stuff he does.
The thing when you say about the floating rock and stuff like that, that also, do you remember the Euler's disc?
Oh yeah, that brings back memories. Yep, yep.
That's kind of what you reminded me of also, because let me tell you one thing about the Euler's disc and stuff. Now this, where we're talking about the Euler's disc, that Joe, it's a disc that comes in the surface. The surface is like a round wooden plate that weighs like about 5 pounds, man, heavy as hell. And it has this disc, like a big giant, it looks like a hockey puck, and you're supposed to like spin it around, and the disc then starts reflecting lights, and it goes all over, and it spins for a long time. But together with that, they also had the Levitron. If you remember the Levitron, that was where you were supposed to balance a top in
I
the
do. I remember
air,
that.
and it
Yep.
would spin. Okay, I have all of them. Let me tell you, they later had to actually put a device to help you levitate the tops, because it was
Yeah.
impossible. Having the device brand new, I bought them when in the malls, you would have the
Mm-hmm.
sharper image. And I think I bought it in the sharper image. This was probably, I don't know, 2001, 2002 when I bought this, 2005. Who knows the date? I'm bad with dates, but I tried to levitate that top. And I think that top was a copy of the top secret spinning top that Johnson
Mm-hmm.
Smith sold, which to my amazement, Craig Tarbeck said it was the best-selling product ever of
Wow.
Johnson Smith, and I'm very shocked because I do have it was also they had the thing that looked like a black flying saucer, which was called the visual thing. You would put a ring inside, and then it looked like it was on top. It was a
Mm-hmm.
illusion. I forgot the name of it, which I have about 36 of those, and they actually have been in my possession so old that some of them, the mirror inside just faded away, so the illusion's not
Yeah.
even good anymore. But those things, the top and everything like that, I never was able to make one of those
No,
things.
it was near
Like
impossible. It really was.
I tried, and the freaking top would just
Yep.
jump off to the right, to the left, because it's powered by a
Yep.
magnet. So the idea is if you can spin the top precisely in the
Dead
center,
center. Yep.
dead center, you get it to spin for days in
Yeah.
midair. So they've made, ever since that, they've made a flying Earth, they made a
Mm.
flying moon. They sell a lot of those where, they have a globe that levitates a light bulb that's inside the globe and it's levitating between two
Right.
magnets. And this all goes back to the 70s when one of the first inventions of levitating stuff is where they had, and this is a funny story, they had this little wooden thing where you had a square cube in the center attached by an invisible fishing line. And the cube was called the floating cube, and you would put your photographs
Oh, I
inside the
remember that.
cube.
Yep. I remember.
Remember that? There was a big, strong magnet. I mean, I have a
Yeah.
couple of those. There's a strong magnet on top, and the cube would float in midair with your photo. But the thing was, what was holding it from attaching to the ceiling was, from the strong magnet, was an invisible string. So one day I bought one, and my wife put it on the TV stand next to the TV. And I realized that the colors of the TV were going to the right. It had like a rainbow effect. And I'm like, what the hell? The old tube TVs? And I almost had the damn thing repaired because the colors were going. It was because the magnet was pulling it. And that's, those are funny things that, back from the day. Just like one thing that Joe would love is when I had my first color TV, Chuck, back in 1976, I think it was a remote control, and it sounded with sound waves.
Wow.
So you would be able to turn the TV, to turn the TV on and off, you had to pull the little button to go in and out. But then when you went to change the channel, the volume, it would go like
Isn't
clong,
that
clong,
something? Wow.
and it was sound operated. The problem is when the fire department passed outside, your TV turned on in the middle of the night. living in New York City, that was kind of crazy, But I still remember that. In fact, I have my grandson when he was born. No, not my grandson. I'm sorry, my son actually. They gave him a remote control robot that worked with the sonic sound, like you going ding ding, and so that you know what type of sound I'm talking about. You know the jumping quarter, very famous in Johnson Smith and all the
Yes.
companies. You put in your hand, and when the little disc that in comic books they used to sell them as flying saucers. Okay, it's a disc. It's a metallic disc that it turns inside out when you touch it because of the heat of your hand. But when it cools, it bounces off the table and it goes like 3-4 feet high in the air. It does the same thing. Like when you go like that, tick tock, that's the sound that the changes make. I mean, do you remember those changes, Chuck? I mean, you're my age.
Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, I do. Yeah, you know what? Because you guys brought up Vincent Price before, and I was going to say, Eddie, those commercials with the shrunken heads and all that stuff with the apples, they were actually live back when we were kids. I mean, that was a current commercial. I can remember actually seeing that commercial, and I always wanted one of those kits, but I never got it. But my parents did get me, which I still have packed away, and it's in pretty good condition. I have the Thing Maker or the Fright Factory. So I still have mine from when I was a kid. I think it's labeled 1966, but I got it in about 69. And I tell you what, that thing is amazing. I mean, me and my brother would play with that thing for hours, and with the goop where you pour like into the molds, and then once it warms up, then there's a cooling dish that you put it in, and you peel off these little bugs and creatures. And there was even one mold we have where you made a shrunken head. It was really cool.
I do have one, but you know what? Mine's is missing a couple parts. I think the box is the best thing on it. But creepy
Yep.
crawlers were
Creepy
also a big
crawlers.
thing. Creepy crawlers with commercial, but the Vincent Price commercials were really astounding. There was one item too that I think I mentioned to Joe one time and Todd that there was, if you remember, let me see if you remember this. There was a toy that Maxwell Smart, the guy who
Hmm.
played Maxwell Smart, he used to advertise all the Skittle
Oh, I
shootouts,
remember
Skittle
that. Yep.
bowling on
Yep.
TV. Okay, do you remember there was one that it was? It looked like a triangle. It was red, and you had like this podiums on each side, not podium, but like what's the name when you take a ball and you hit the ball to make the item shoot out? A pendulum, like a pendulum
Oh,
on each
okay.
side, and it had a moving target that the target will go across the bottom of the game. Listen, I had one of those games. My people that I talked to go, oh, yeah, I remember
I
because it
do.
was on live
I do
TV.
remember
Maxwell
that.
Smart. Okay, you want to know something? That game ceased to exist. It's no pictures on it on eBay. I mean, on the
Wow.
internet. I've never seen a photograph of that darn game. And I've
Wow.
looked for everything from Skittle shootout, but the game with the moving target, I remember Maxwell Smart would walk
Yeah.
into the room and he'd go, okay, and he walked down, and he started shooting, and the target moved across, and it was like the target was like the same logo from the
Hmm.
store Target. But what it did, it was kind of it rolled the roll across the
Hmm.
game by battery operated, obviously through a little string. And if you hit the target with the ball, when you hit the pendulum, it made the target go to the other side because the target was shaped like a plate, but it was flattened so that it
Hmm.
would, flip one side or the other. That game, you have no idea how much I've looked
Isn't
for
that
that just to
something?
see a video
Wow.
of it. I did have a picture. I probably have it in my storage. I did find a picture on the internet about 20 years ago, but it was a very small picture. I've never seen
Hmm.
it since because I would like to have the name. Maybe with looking the name, you find the darn game.
Wow.
But and you remember. Everybody does, but nobody can tell me the name of the
No.
actual game. I thought it was Skittle Shootout, but it wasn't Skittle
Yeah.
Shootout. It was
There was
something
there was
else. They
something else
just
called Skittle Pull. Remember the pull balls?
yeah, I have that. In fact, my
Yep.
brother bought me a brand new one, not a brand new, original condition. He paid like 200. I'm like, he sends me this huge box, and I'm like, I really didn't want that. What I was looking for was the Target one. That he thought it
We're
was that
you
one
know what? We're so
with
old,
Max.
Eddie, that we remember this stuff. We actually had these when we were kids.
And Joe remembers he was sucking on a lollipop in his carriage at the time.
That wasn't even a thought in my parents' head.
Oh my God, that's so crazy. But listen, we're running up short there on the hour there. So, what last words you guys have? I guess Joe, how long we have? An hour, a minute and a half?
We got about 7 minutes left.
Oh, okay, that's right. Because I'm looking here at the thing and I didn't realize we started. Yeah, okay, 7 minutes. That's good. I'm sorry, I wrong in the timing there. Yeah, but Chuck, we grew up in the right time, man. We grew up right before video games. Do you remember, Chuck? Do you remember this video game that was a triangle and it had a gun in one side that you shot this little white Texas looking like cowboy
I do
across the
remember that.
screen? It had a driving wheel
I
on the
do.
other side, and then it had the
I
ping
do remember
pong,
that.
and you changed it. Okay, that game I have one still in mint condition,
Wow. Wow.
and I have the three cartridges that come with
Cool.
it. One of them was like the different ping pong games. Um,
What did that play on? Was that on Atari?
no, it wasn't Atari. I think, to be honest with you, that was made by ColecoVision, which I think later
Yeah.
became the rival of Atari. Like, what do we have today? Nintendo. I think Nintendo. I'm talking out of my head right now. I don't know if this is true or not, but I know that Atari, when the Atari Master System came out, and the Atari Master System was late early 70s and only played ping pong. And then when they started doing all the
Hmm.
cartridges, like one of my favorite cartridges was the Haunted House, and they started adding that. They came with there was a rival. I think it was called
Hmm.
ColecoVision, and then there was another one that came later on, which they did another Master System. I think it was called the Master System, and it was Nintendo's rival. Those companies, I think, merged into what we have today as Atari. I mean, Atari is not even
No.
around today anymore. I think the name is, a few things, but I think now you have Nintendo and PlayStation. I think that originally those companies were like Coleco. I mean, I don't know if they merged or
Hmm.
changed, but I mean, here's a few years ago in a mall. They had an arcade in back of the mall, and the arcade were selling asteroid machines, were
Wow.
selling space invader
How
machine. You know how
much?
much? $300 a
Wow.
piece, the full units. I told my wife I'm taking one. She's like, "You're not bringing that to the house." But hey, let me tell you something. Talking about that, I bought myself a life-size slot machine that they, of course, fixed so you can't use it as a gambling device, which
Right.
shoots coins. That thing weighs about
Hmm.
150 pounds. And let me tell you one thing: when you put that inside an apartment, which that's why it's in my storage, when you pull the
It's
lever on
loud.
that thing and you win, that
It is
shit
very
is
loud.
loud. You can hear it
Yeah.
across the street, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Whoa!"
I
You
got a
know?
few down in my game
You
room. I got a couple of those kinds of slot machines, and I got a pachinko machine where it's a form of pinball, but it's upright, and there's little wire. Yep.
the
Yep. So
Chinese,
the
yeah,
balls
the
will
Chinese
bounce off the
ones.
little pins. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, I think the pachinko machine was one of the ones that they made when we were kids. You remember that little plastic thing that
Yep.
you hit the little metal thing,
Yep.
pop, and the ball. I think that's where they
Oh
made
yeah.
them from.
Way back when
The
I was in
original.
high school, Eddie, I used to hang at the arcades, and I remember there was a pattern with Pac-Man, and somebody taught me the pattern. So for 1 quarter, I mean, I would play literally like 2.5, 3 hours. Like once you knew the pattern and you didn't lollygag, if you went right through the pattern, you could go to the next board, the next board, the next board. I mean, I was up there far. I had all the keys, I think it was. I had a bunch of keys and everything, and but I'd play for maybe 2.5, 3 hours on 1 quarter. It was amazing.
I was really good at
I
knockout.
I
Remember
do.
Punch
That was
Out?
cool.
I really got into that game. Me and my brother-in-law. But the other one that I really loved was
Oh, I
Moonlander.
remember that was
Remember the
cool.
Moonlander? Yeah, you had the thing, and then you had the shifting gear. It looked like an
Yeah,
airplane shifting thing where it's going to go fly up and down. And then you had the four buttons, and you had to land this spaceship on this jagged terrain, which is funny because it was all black and white,
that was neat.
and the
That
ship
was
and
cool.
everything. You know that. You know what I did? I actually about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they made duplicate life-size machines that they still have them right now. They sell for like $349 in
Hmm.
Walmart and stuff. And you need to put them on top of this square box to make them like
Hmm.
stand up. But it's a full-fledged arcade machine, just like the originals. I was able to get one at the crazy price of $39,
Wow.
man. I don't know if I think it was GameStop was going out of business or FYE. I think it was FYI. They were closing it down. They sold it at 80% of the value. I paid like 39. All I know is I still have it in the basement. I haven't even opened it, but it has 8 games on it. It has
Hmm.
Pac-Man, Galaga, Galaxian, Asteroids, and the reason I bought it is because it had
That was neat.
Moonlander.
Yeah.
And then you also had that. Remember the one what was it called? The one that you had the three silos in the bottom, and then
Oh,
was it
Missile Command.
Missile Command?
Yeah.
Yeah, Missile Command.
That thing was
Yeah.
hard, man. I was never good at that, man. No matter how much the freaking missiles came on you, and then at the end you had the
Yeah,
big
that was
bang.
cool. Yeah. I
Really
grew up
cool,
playing
man.
pool a lot too. You know what? My parents had a pool table. They had a pool table when I was a kid, and you know what? I was pretty good. And it kind of stuck with me. So I'm half decent at pool. But I grew up as a kid. I was a paper boy when I was a kid, and I'd be playing pool. With my friends and my brother's friends, and I would usually beat them. I was actually pretty good. It was amazing.
When when made
Nice. Well, hey guys, let me cut in here. We got about a minute and a half left.
and
Um, Chuck, I want to thank you once again
Hey,
for
it's
for
always a
stopping
pleasure.
by and joining us. Eddie, thanks as always. And for everyone out there, thank you for joining us. You could go ahead and search us on your favorite podcast platforms at houseoftheunusual.radio, all one word, until we change it over, and we'll let everybody know. Also, head over to houseoftheunusual.com. Sign up for our free newsletter. We have a forum there that you could sign up for free. Meet some like-minded people, join in the conversation there. And also check us out on YouTube at House of the Unusual and on Facebook and Instagram at House of the Unusual. So plenty of ways to interact with us, and you can check us out every was it Wednesday, Eddie? We're coming out now still at 3 a.m.
Well, actually Thursday, because it's Wednesday now. Thursday, 3 a.m.
Okay, yeah, Wednesday night, Thursday morning. So check us out every week. We got a new show for you. And once again, everybody out there, thanks for joining us. And Eddie and Chuck, thanks for stopping by.
And one thing I want to finally say really quick for the last 30 seconds, Olympic sales in back of comic books selling postcards. I won myself my own pool table. And that's how I first played pool. Guys, have a great night.
Thanks. Good night.
And take care.